Yes, everybody. So we talked about the first lesson plan category, and that is micro teaching lesson plans. We talked about various skills that are being used in the micro teaching lesson plan. How is the objective written? What is written in the component column, and how lesson planning of micro teaching skills is done. Let us move further now towards the yet another second type of lesson plan, and that is, as we all know, it is integrated lesson plan, also known as bridge teaching, perhaps also known as mini teaching at times, because micro teaching is for 6 minutes, and when we come upon integrated lesson plans, it's all about 12 to 15 minutes. And stray lesson is about 30 to 40 minutes. So this is also known as mini teaching or a bridge teaching. Okay, now, talking about integrated lesson, what is an integrated lesson? Integrated lesson is an effort to help the teacher trainees to gain mastery over the combination of micro skills. Now, here what happens is, in micro teaching skills, we concentrate upon one skill at one time. Here, combination of 4 or 5 micro skills is taken together with a small portion of content, and the bridge teaching is done, right? How do we write the objectives here on the lesson plan? Now, for example, here I have put that if you're taking 4 skills, set induction, fluency, blackboard, and reinforcement. So the first 4 objectives will be of the skills that we are taking. If you're taking 4, 4. If you're taking 5, of course, 5 objectives. How do we write it? To enable the teacher trainee to develop skill of set induction. To enable the teacher trainee to develop skill of fluency in questioning. To enable the teacher trainee to develop skill of using Blackboard. To enable the teacher trainee to develop the skill of reinforcement. Again, I repeat, as we are here exemplifying that we're taking 4 micro skills named set induction, fluency in questioning, Blackboard, and reinforcement. Hence, we are writing first 4 objectives in their names. The 5th objective will be followed and written as to enable the teacher trainee to develop skill of integration in dash subject, whatever subject, right? So the 5th objective will come upon integration skill, and still the 6th objective will be to enable the teacher trainee to teach the topic, because we have also taken a slight portion of the content, and hence our objective also becomes to enable the teacher trainee to teach the topic. Here we can write the name of the topic, but usually on the lesson plan we write the topic on the right hand corner of the lesson plan, and hence there's no need of writing it here. Okay, so there are 6 objectives which are written on the integrated lesson plan. Now, how do we do the lesson planning of integrated lesson? Right, there the columns, all the components of the selected micro skills are to be taken. अगर हमने यहाँ पे 4 micro skills लिए हैं, then all the components of all the 4 selected skills are to be written, right? Of course, in the introduction, we begin with writing of the components of set induction. The same rule follows for the set induction, that whichever desirable component we are using, we write adjacent to it in the component column. And when once the topic of the integrated lesson begins, then fluency, Blackboard, and reinforcement will go as a combination of the components, and whichever component of whichever skill is being used, we write adjacent to it and follow the rules that way. In the beginning, only components related to set induction are written, and after introduction of the lesson, the components related to other selected skills are written adjacent to its use. So this is the way how we prepare an integrated lesson, how we write an integrated lesson plan. Okay, moving to the very important category of the lesson plan, that is stray lesson plan. Now, this is very interesting because this is a daily plan. And again, when we talk about micro and integrated lesson plans, they are learning lesson plans for any teacher trainees. But when it comes to stray lesson plan, this is a practical approach which a teacher trainee starts to learn, right? So stray lesson plan is very important. What is a stray lesson plan? Stray lesson plan can be defined in that way that it is teachers' mental and emotional visualization of classroom activities based on achievement of specific objectives and expected behavioral change. Okay, very important part here is specific objectives and expected behavioral change. Whatever activities a teacher does in the class has an objective behind it. A move of a teacher to writing a word with a chalk on the blackboard. Each and every activity of a teacher has a specific objective behind it. And this is followed by specific activities. So a thing to remember here is that each and every specific activity has a specific objective. Each and every specific objective will concentrate upon expected behavioral change in a student. Let's see the characteristics of a good stray lesson plan. A good stray lesson plan is always in a written format. It is never in oral form. It is always in a written form. Of course, there are different styles of writing it. Good stray lesson plan will have appropriate, general, and specific objectives. Appropriate, what do we mean by that? We will see in the next slide. Number of specific objectives in accordance to the number of specific activities to be carried on in the classroom. As I just told you, that each and every specific activity of a teacher will have a specific objective. So, जितनी specific activities teacher को करनी है class में, the teacher decides, the teacher reads, the teacher speaks aloud, the teacher explains, the teacher suggests, the teacher criticizes, the teacher writes on the blackboard. Each and every specific activity has a specific objective. So the number of specific objective and specific activity are equal. ठीक है? तो कई बार ये क्वेश्चन हमारे पास आता है कि स्पेसिफिक ऑब्जेक्टिव कितने लिखने चाहिए? उतने लिखने चाहिए जितनी स्पेसिफिक एक्टिविटी एक टीचर को क्लास में करनी है. Okay. Then, in accordance to background of the class, yes, a stray lesson plan has to be in accordance to the background. That is the level of the class, the level of the students, the level of the region, the level of the school, right? Proper planning of teaching methods, techniques, devices, approaches, and teaching aids. Each and every planning of teaching methods, teaching approaches, techniques, devices has to be done. For example, here, in a content that I have to take for 40 minutes, as a teacher, while drawing a lesson plan, I should first decide what will be my approach towards the teaching in these 40 minutes. Will it be an inductive approach or a deductive approach? Will I go with an analysis approach or a synthesis approach, or should I take a combination of both? Define your approach before making a lesson plan. Then method. Which method will suit the content best? Will it be a simple lecture method or no? Move a step forward to explanation method, or no, still we move forward to a project method. So which method should I be using it for fulfilling the needs and the requirements of the particular content on hand and the students on the other side? So decide the method. The third thing, techniques. Which are the techniques which will make my method more effective? Yes, I am using narration method, for example. So which are the techniques which I will use to make that narration effective? Maybe I'll be using some few demonstrations or a questioning part, maybe a probing questioning part, right? So what will I be using it? So that has to be defined in techniques. Devices, what are devices? Devices are those things which play a very minor role in your classroom activity, but if they are not included, the lesson plan seems as if something is missing. And what is that device? The minimum use of that particular thing, a particular technique which you are doing. It might be again anything like reciting or calculating, right? Anything, but that will come. And teaching aids. So what are the teaching aids that you have? The specification of all this in a good stray lesson plan adds to the lesson's effectiveness. Then we have precise mention of teaching learning activities. Yes, what will a teacher do? What will a student do? And mostly, as you all know, we write it in a question answer form. Should have element of correlation. A good stray lesson plan should have an element of correlation. Correlation here means correlation with the previous topic that is taught, the correlation with the daily life examples, the correlation with some other subject, but any correlation will give a better effect of a lesson plan. Should have been prepared using sufficient number of reference books, so the names of the reference books should be there. Should pre-decide Blackboard work and assignment to be given, that all has to be planned beforehand, and should be the best integration of content and method. The content that we are using and the method that we will be following, it should be the best integration, right? So stray lesson plan, these are the features of a good stray lesson plan. Now, when we talk about stray lesson plan, and since our lecture concentrates upon objective, let us talk about what is an instructional objective in a stray lesson plan. Instructional objective is defined as someone or something that is real, that is not imagined. Objective is real, right? We cannot say like the painting of a tree cannot be called an objective, but yes, an actual tree can be called an objective. Okay, so objectives are always real, they are not imaginary. Then objective is a specific result that a teacher aims to achieve within a time frame and available resources. And objectives are more specific and easier to measure than goals. They're the basic tools that underlie in the planning and strategic activities. Let us see how should be an objective. The characteristics of instructional objectives. They are clearly stated tasks. See, they are free from any jargon. Nothing is written as a jargon or as an additional word. We only write one action word and clearly state the task. That is known as unvague task, right? Describe, analyze, evaluate, suggest, any one action verb we are writing, and hence we can say that the objective should have the characteristics of clearly stated task. Then important learning goals. The objective should describe the essential learning in the course which a student must achieve. Right? Out of the content, what is the essential learning goal that a student has to achieve? Specific goals should mention this, should actually mention it, not should, but must mention it. It is mandatory. Achievable. Objectives can be achieved within a given period of time. You teach for 25 minutes in the class and form the objectives, and what has to be achieved can be achieved within 25 plus last 5 minutes of the lecture, right? So objectives can be achieved within a given period of time. Demonstrable and measurable. Objectives should be demonstrable in a tangible way. As we told, they are always defined. They are always clearly stated. So there is a tangibleness in the objective. It should have it. They are accessible. They are measurable. They can be measured. Whether this objective had an effect on students' achievement. If it had, how much, to what degree. So they are measurable. Measurable in case of examining and assessing in various ways. Objectives are fair and equitable. all students, even those with disabilities or constraints, have a fair chance of achieving them. So these are the few features of objectives. Now, coming back to the Stray lesson plan, in which usually that we follow the Stray lesson plan, usually we divide the objectives into two categories: general objectives and specific objectives. Let us understand what is general objective. General objectives and specific objectives. See, general objectives are much broader objectives that aim to study, that aim to learning, right? And mostly general objectives, they're ultimate aims of education, right? They are long-term goals as such, long-term educational goals. They include essentially the promotion of well-integrated person capable of making him a responsible citizen, right? But they're long-term goals. If we talk about similarly specific objectives are very specific in nature. They're measurable, they're short-term goals, right? They are like various general objectives then in a lesson plan will follow with the specific objectives. There'll be list of specific objectives out of the general objectives. Okay, so specific objectives depend on each and every specific activity of a teacher, while general objectives, they depend upon the main educational goals that are fixed. Let us see the list of general objectives, how they are written. The general objectives are always written in simple present tense. Why simple present tense? Is the ongoing process, right? It is an ongoing process, and hence we write this in a simple present tense. The pupil acquires knowledge in so-and-so subject. This is the first general objective. The second, the pupil develops understanding in so-and-so subject. The pupil applies knowledge and understanding in new and concrete situation. So the first is about knowledge, understanding, and third is about application. The pupil develops certain desirable skills in so-and-so subject. The pupil develops positive attitude towards so-and-so subject. The pupil develops sense of appreciation towards so-and-so subject. These are 7 general objectives necessarily to be written in the same order as they are listed in the lesson. The first point. The second point, it is not necessary that one lesson plan may include all the 7 general objectives. Okay, but yes, it will never be possible that knowledge, understanding, application is included and we directly skip skills, interest and directly jump over to positive attitude and write directly positive attitude. No, that will not be possible. Okay, so in the same order they are written, yes, but they all may not be the part of one Stray lesson. Okay, talking about specific objectives, specific objectives are written in simple future tense. They're the term that we use is the pupil will. Okay, you can visit this YouTube channel and see the list of specific objectives that has been mentioned. Okay, now, how do we write an objective-based Stray lesson plan? सबसे पहले क्या करना चाहिए हमको? When we are planning to write a lesson plan and we are planning to frame objectives, what is the process? पहला step है हमारा, identify the name and the level of general objective necessary to achieve your objective. आपका specific objective achieve करने के लिए, what is the general objective? Identify the name of that general objective. For example, if you want the student to remember something, you've started teaching and you want your student to remember or recall something, right? So here, identify that what is the general objective that stands for this? It is knowledge. Recalling is done in knowledge. that you would always see when you refer to the list of the general and specific objectives, the link that I have given you. So here, identify the name of general objective and the level. What is the level of the general objective? Recall में कितना knowledge हो रहा है, right? So identify, tell, name out. These are all of knowledge. So it's better that you see that what is the level of the general objective that will be used here, right? The second step is write measurable objectives for the class. Okay. जब आपने ऑब्जेक्टिव आपने डिसाइड कर लिया है, you have also decided the names of the general objectives out of which they will come, then write the measurable objectives for the class. Okay, out of the list of the objectives that you have, उसमें से measurable कितने हैं? Write them. Before beginning writing objectives, think about what type of expected behavioral change you want to bring. Yes, just don't go on writing specific objectives. लेकिन उस एक specific objective से what kind of expected behavioral change you want to bring, please start writing that too along with that. Keep in mind that too. Now, depending upon the specific objective that you have in back of your mind and the expected behavioral change that you want to bring in the student in future, in near future, in your class, in the next minute, select an appropriate action verb. Select an appropriate action verb, right? Action verb, create your own very objective. Action verb आपको मिल गया, general objective आपके पास है, आपका objective बन गया. The pupil will recall, finish, right? The pupil will explain. Writing learning objectives that use Bloom's taxonomy to classify learning from the most simplest to most complex. Yes. Now here, if we are taking knowledge, so remember, like for each general objective in a lesson plan, we always proceed from the most simplest form of specific objective of that particular general objective to the most complex form. Okay. For example, if you're taking understanding, अगर हम understanding objective ले रहे हैं, general objective, उसका specific objective, when I start teaching the topic, and it begins with that the pupil will explain. ठीक है? So the pupil will explain से शुरू हो रहा है. So explain is a simple form. The teacher has explained. Now the pupil is explaining. Hence you are putting the specific objective of the pupil will explain. ठीक है? उसके बाद what will happen as we move further to the difficult part in understanding? Pupil explain कर देगा. Then the pupil will explain in simple parts. Simplifying. The pupil will simplify. The pupil will discriminate. जो भी कंटेंट है उसमें से जो दो कंटेंट के फेजेस हैं या कंटेंट के टाइप्स हैं उसमें जब डिस्टिंग्विश करता है pupil, that is an advanced form of understanding. So the pupil will distinguish, the pupil will discriminate, the pupil will compare, the pupil will contrast, the pupil will classify, the pupil will, ये सब करने के बाद dividing it into simpler forms, classifying, then the pupil will infer, the pupil will judge. So you see, like we began with a very simple form of the pupil will explain. और वहां से हम आए हैं the pupil will judge or the pupil will give an advance an argument. The pupil will make a judgment. The pupil will conclude. जब हम इस तरह वाले specific objectives पे आते हैं, मतलब हमने यहाँ क्या किया? We began from the simplest form to the difficult form of understanding all over the lesson plan. Okay. Construct a lesson plan using appropriate approaches, pedagogies, techniques, and devices. As we talked before, the number of specific objectives will depend upon the number of specific activities. So this is how we write the objective in the Stray lesson. There are 2 links which might further help you to have a better clarity on how to write objective-based Stray lesson plan. Yeah. Okay, from my side, I have made an attempt to make more clear about the objectives that are put into the Stray lesson plan by putting one full Stray lesson plan into phases. When we talk about Stray lesson plan phase 1, as we all know, it is about introduction of the topic. In that, in the Stray lesson plan, mostly we write the pupil will recall the previous knowledge. And this comes from knowledge general category. So we put K in the bracket. The pupil will observe the chart model demonstration carefully. Yes, now here, if you're showing any demonstration, any chart, any model, any process, any experiment in the set induction, so when the pupil is observing that carefully, it comes out of interest. Okay, so this we can put it into interest. The pupil will connect pre-knowledge to new knowledge. Right? The teacher has asked some questions of pre-knowledge. The teacher has shown some demonstration. Now, what teacher is doing is that on the basis of this, she is trying to introduce the students to the new knowledge or the new topic. So the pupil will connect pre-knowledge to new knowledge, becomes a specific objective. This comes from again knowledge. The pupil will name out the topic. The pupil will come with the topic. Oh, this is the topic which you want to teach, the new topic. Perhaps this. Okay, near to that topic, maybe not the same topic that has coming, but here, what I mean to say here is that in introduction, mostly we write this specific objectives. Talking about Stray lesson phase 2. Okay, now Stray lesson phase 2. The topic begins, that is phase 2. See, mostly Stray lessons can cover specific objectives of all 7 general objectives. This I mentioned to you earlier also. But it is not necessary that all should be included in one lesson plan. But nevertheless, the first 4 will always form a basic lesson plan. And the first 4 is knowledge, understanding, application, and skill. Right? Okay, let us see knowledge. What is knowledge? When a student is able to recall, remember the information, there is something in our mind which is kept as an information. So, it might be the name of a book, the name of the author, the year in which the author was born, right? So, information type things, they all come into the category of knowledge. When a student is able to recall or remember that information, we say that it is the general objective of knowledge. The action verbs that are used or the specific objectives that are formed under this category of knowledge will include the action verbs like recall, recognize, name, list, label, etc. Okay. Second general objective, as we know, is understanding. What is understanding? When a student grasps the meaning of information by interpreting and translating what is learned. See, when a teacher teaches something to a student, okay, it might be something new which a teacher is sharing with a student. On the other hand, when a student is able to understand it in parts, understand it as a whole, understand it in that way that he can write the things in his own simple manner, in his own way of writing, that means he has understood. Okay, right? So that is understanding. The action verbs here which we use are interpret, summarize, compare, explain, classify, differentiate, judge, infer, etc., etc. Okay. The third general objective is application. When the student applies solutions in new situations by applying acquired knowledge, facts, techniques, rules, and his understanding. Knowledge and understanding combinedly will give this application. Okay? So when a student is able to apply the principles that he has studied before into the new concrete situation, that means he is doing application. And in that, the action verbs or the specific objectives will have implement, the pupil will implement, use, execute, carry out, solve, etc. Moving to the fourth general objective is skill. When a student is able to enhance skill of observation, reading, writing, calculating, drawing, public speaking, etc. It's all about skill, right? Let me tell you that our lesson plan should not only concentrate upon knowledge, understanding, and application, but necessarily it should also include little part of skill, because little part of skill is everywhere along with knowledge, understanding, and application, right? The action verbs in the skill may be observe the charts minutely, carefully, observe the model very minutely, carefully, observe the film very minutely. The pupil will read, the pupil will write, the pupil will recite, draw, etc. Right? So whenever we are making a basic lesson plan, the four general objectives of knowledge, understanding, application, and skill should predominantly be there into the lesson plan, should basically be there in the lesson plan. Yes, the ratio of each and every general objective will differ from content to content, from chapter to chapter, from pedagogy to pedagogy. Okay. Moving to the fifth, sixth, and seventh general objective. Now, these 6 general objectives may or may not be the part of all STAY lesson plans. But yes, as one subject proceeds and a teacher is on the way of going from one chapter to the other and moving towards the completion of the course, then in those STAY lesson plans, 5th, 6th, and 7th type of the general objectives will automatically be covered by the teacher into the lesson plan. What is that? Interest. Yes. See, the basic idea upon teaching is to create, arouse, and sustain interest of the students in the topic, right? Yes, to arouse and create interest of the students into the topic might take a lecture, perhaps at times couple of lectures. So whenever it is happening, in whichever lesson plan number it is happening, there we put the general objective of interest. When a student is able to arouse and sustain interest in learning. Here the action verbs that we use is, the pupil will express his own ideas about the content. You know, he will give his own ideas about the content. He will take part voluntarily, not compulsorily because he has to answer, he'll answer, or because he has to prepare a project, he will prepare a project. But he will start taking the part voluntarily. He will make his own notes. And when you see this, this means that the interest level has been aroused, right? So these are the action verbs for framing specific objectives under interest general objective. After interest comes appreciation. Now what is appreciation? When a student appreciates the learning material and his subject, how can you judge that a student is appreciating? Here the action verbs are, the student collects extra information. He Googles and he finds extra information about the content. He is interested, okay? So when he is interested, he'll find a similar content. But when he appreciates the content, he'll start finding something additional and try to make that content complete, something which even perhaps at times the teacher does not know. Then he starts sharing that content with everybody because he's fond of doing that. And when this behavior is seen into a student, that means there comes an appreciation general objective. Appreciation general objective will have these action verbs. And the last and the utmost important is attitude. When a student develops positive attitude towards the material, subject, right? He has a positive attitude. For him, this subject is the best and no other subject in the world can compare that subject. He has that positive framework of mind for that particular subject, for that particular content. And how can we know that this is the attitude of the subject? This comes from his behavior of, he visits the library frequently, right? Not forcibly, voluntarily, but frequently. For each and every small query of his, he goes to the library, refers it. He tries to correlate the content with real life situations. And when this is done, he has developed a positive. He celebrates the subject experts, the celebrities of his subject. He celebrates the birth anniversaries of them. He wants to have a room in that subject, a specific room for that subject where he can share more and more ideas, right? Like science room, commerce room. So when this is the behavior of the student, when this is seen in the behavior of the student, that means he has developed a positive attitude for a particular subject. Okay, so these are the 7 general objectives along with the action verbs, which helps us to frame a specific objective in the lesson. Okay, moving to Stray lesson plan phase 2, some tips that you should remember is the specific objective is written adjacent to the specific activity. As we all know, specific activity we write in question form, teacher students activity. Uske adjacent में, in the specific objective column, we will write the specific objective. When we are writing the specific objective, it will be written in future tense, the pupil will. And suppose the action verb is remember, then in the bracket we also should put capital K, so that we come to know that this specific objectives is coming from which general objective. And this way we write the other specific objectives also. The second tip is each specific activity will have a specific objective in case of knowledge, understanding and application. इसलिए आपके पास जितने questions हैं टीचर स्टूडेंट एक्टिविटी में उतने स्पेसिफिक ऑब्जेक्टिव तो बकायदा होंगे ही होंगे, right? But they would all come out of knowledge, understanding and application, because questions that you form, they are always out of these 3 general objectives. Then how do we write and where do we write the specific objectives for the other general objectives? जैसे कि skill, interest, appreciation and attitude. Okay, see, for that आपको जहां जहां लगता है, whenever you are teaching and in every content point where you feel that a student is expected to bring a behavioral change of skill, there you have to insert the specific objective of a skill appropriately out of the selection made from the list of the specific objectives. जहां आपको लगता है कि यह पॉजिटिव एटीट्यूड डेवलप हो रहा है बच्चे का, and that will be the expected behavioral change, in the specific objective column you need to write the specific objective for positive attitude. So this is the way we write the specific objectives in the lesson. Whenever in lesson plan there is a scope of skill, interest, appreciation and attitude, the specific objectives are inserted in specific objectives. So this is how we move from phase 2 to now phase 3, Stray lesson phase 3. After the routine teaching is done, Stray lesson always moves for evaluation. Here the specific objective put is the pupil will drill the acquired knowledge in oral, written, schematic, diagrammatic form. आपने जैसा evaluation उनको दिया किया है आपने last 5 minutes में most of us we do the evaluation. आपने जैसे evaluation किया है, either you are taking evaluation in oral form out of questions written, perhaps you have given the chits to them, or you are taking a GK quiz for them, schematic, आपने कुछ schematic diagram बनाने को बोल दिया in a diagrammatic form, whatever way you need to write that optional way, and this is the specific objective written in the specific objective column under evaluation. For assignment, the pupil will strengthen the knowledge and express in oral, written, schematic, diagrammatic form, again depending upon what assignment you have given. And the pupil will collect extra information, right? So this is how we write the objectives in the Stray lesson plans. I've tried to divide it into phase 1, 2, and 3 for a better understanding part. I suppose the objectives and the general objectives, the specific objectives, and how to make and frame them, how to list out them, how to make use of action verbs and frame them, and how to put in the lesson plan. All I have summarized and in my topic that was named and given to me as objective-based lesson plan. I suppose the things are clear to you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for listening me. Thank you for giving opportunity. Thank you, everyone.